This area here is part of about 30 acres that was done during the Dutchman project. My crew did this piece, so there's an executive summary that I believe's in the handouts. It'll say Lost Dutchman Executive Summary. And so the project started at the school. It's off the road I believe it was 70 feet, 50, 70 feet, down to Mountain View, which is the north-south road just east of here, and then down Mountain View towards US 60. So this piece, we were given the task of creating a fire break or a fuel break. We were more aggressive within the first 5 feet off the fence than we were in the rest of the area. But again, I was hesitant to cut, and I was reaching out to people asking for a hierarchy of plants and trying to figure out, all right, if I got to make a decision or if I got to tell my guys to make a choice of what to cut, what should we cut? And we chose to cut the stuff that was most abundant, which happened to be the creosote. A lot of the creosote kind of sporadically got cut, but it's growing back, which is pretty cool. The creosote's pretty resilient. You'll see that in the fire scar today too. You know, a lot of it looked dead for a long time, and it's starting to grow back. So fairly resilient plant. We left things intact, so the drainage behind you we didn't touch. You know, we wanted to leave that drainage alone. And then we really took kind of a conservative approach to the things that we were cutting. So look around at this. That ironwood's within the area. Fire breaks are places for firefighters to come make a stand. They need to be maintained. And this work was done, I think, 3 years ago, and you know, we still got piles in here. There's invasives that have come in. Fire can carry through here. It's gonna slow down because it's, you know, not gonna get up into anything. But when you cut stuff, in some of the areas, we're seeing the invasives come under the plants that when the limbs come down to the ground, there's not much under there, except for often like a mariposa or, you know, something really nice that you want to keep. But the prescription has you take everything out from under the tree. And so I was like really wanting to see, you know, plant relationships stay intact. If there was a really cool plant growing under a tree, I was saying let's leave it. The other thing, I don't think you'll see it here so much. We were talking about trail defining vegetation. So there was areas where if we would have come in and taken everything out where trails came through, you wouldn't have, you know, hikers would maybe not find the trail. And then we were talking about a lot of time firefighters and fuels folks are going to go after all the dead material. And I don't like taking down dead standing ironwoods. They're hardy, they're gonna be there for 100 years. They're called an ironwood because they're really tough. Palo Verde is gonna rot and cause you issues over time. I like getting rid of that stuff, but I was advocating for leaving the dead standing ironwoods. So I think we just need to think about what do we want to see in the end state of a project? What are you trying to achieve, and what values do you have? You know, what things do you want to try to enhance? I don't like cutting anymore. And when we go and look at the next site after this, we're going to look at two places on my properties. One where we're doing some chipping, mulching over stink net, and the chips have been down for I think 2 years now, and we're you know, you can see what that's doing. And then we'll go look where I have a different approach to creating a fuel break on my property where my house is at. I think the end state of this as a cut project area, I liked it, but things have changed for me over time, just with what we're learning and what we're seeing with the invasives coming in.
Why did you say it was?
70 feet, I believe, was the prescription on this one. This area, I chose this area because it was easy to park, had a walk through, and you could see kind of the structure. Some of the things that I talked about when I wrote is the structure of the desert. And I think that's important. The desert has its own unique beauty to it. And it's because of what we're looking at. It's because of the way the vegetation looks. You know, it's the topography. It's all these things that make it special. And like I said, I like to travel. I go to quite a few different places, but I always miss coming back right here. And this is home, and I like the way the trees look. You cut them up, kind of starts looking like the Serengeti when you got the trees all trimmed up, not the Sonoran Desert. So I'm an advocate for maintaining the natural structure of the desert and taking on the challenge of the invasives. That's what's driving fire in the desert. The other thing that I've noticed in my career, 30 going on 34 years now, there's been 3 cycles of invasives and grasses in the desert where we have these big grass seasons. And then it seems to die off for a while. And it's dependent on the moisture cycles that come in, whether or not we're gonna have the moisture that's gonna allow the invasives to continue to grow and cause an issue. So when those cycles kind of peak, which they did 19, 20, 21, and we felt the residual effects of that extra biomass in the desert, um, it will start to die down if it continues to have the same pattern I've seen over time. And so I think that if you're going to manage the invasives when they're posing a problem, um, there's going to be some years where you might not have to do anything. And it really comes down to monitoring, making sure that you're paying attention to the fire break, making sure that your firefighters that are going to use that fire break know about them. Often I ask after a project, hey, do you guys know about the fire break that was put in? And a lot of times they don't. And that's important. The firefighters that are going to use that fire break should be paying attention to it to make sure it's still viable for them. I would say that this fire break's got fuel in it. We've stacked it. We've got dried material that's been cut that's been sitting there for a long time. You know, that doesn't that doesn't make for a good effective fire break. We've got to maintain them. So once a fire break's put in, your job's not done. And I think the way that I see the funding cycles, people get money, go do something, and they did their thing. But now look today as we see these, what happens over the years. There's still things that need to be done over time.
What were those 3 time periods of the cycles?
So we had fires kind of the mid 90s, early 2000s, like 05, 06, I think were big years. 2020, we had the bushfire. 2019, 2020, 2021. But then it was like 05, 06. And then before that, it was probably like Lone Pine Fire was 96, 95, 96, probably in there. So something like that. When we get over probably from the welcome to AJ sign, so like the last stop before lunch today, we're going to look at the base of the Superstition Mountain and we're going to see the fire scar from the massacre fire. And that burned in the 60s, it burned in the 70s, it burned in the early 90s. It's due. And it's very evident when you look up there that a lot of the native veg is gone. It's a lot of grass. You could see where the houses are. You could see the fuel type change. And then when you look over this way, you'll see the last very dense stand of saguaros on this side of the Superstitions, which is at the end of Broadway Road here. And so that's an area that we need to pay attention to and make sure that we're dealing with fire very aggressively in there because we don't want to lose that stand.
Do you have much problem with perennials like Buffelgrass?
So Buffelgrass on Silly Mountain has Buffelgrass. Along 60's got Buffelgrass. I mean, it's out in the Superstitions. Here, you'll probably see it along Goldfield Road. We've got it. I don't know that I've seen much of it on Mountain View, but I know there's some patches over there.
There's a lot at Mountain View to get closer to the mountain.
Okay. So, I mean, it's here. And that's the thing is if, fire breaks move across the landscape. So you may have Buffelgrass in a fire break. You may have fountain grass in a fire break. You may have stinknet in a fire break. And each of those plants may have a unique cycle, right? So now it gets a little bit more challenging to keep that fire break good and clean. But that's the issue. The issue is not an overgrown desert because of fire exclusion. The issue is a fire-prone desert because of the invasives. So we're taking a prescription that is built for like a ponderosa pine forest that experiences fire on its natural fire regime about every 10 to 12 years from a lightning strike that would come through and have a low intensity burn that would keep things kind of limbed up and kill the baby trees trying to grow up. But that's not the problem here. And when we're cutting things and limbing it up and opening up the vegetation, we're letting light in and we're enhancing the invasive issue. We're enhancing the problem that's driving fires across the desert. That's my pitch. That's what I believe I've learned. I was one of Andy's students. I took a 401 class at NAU, and it made me a better firefighter. It made me a better incident commander. It made me really take a look at things that I thought I knew and learn what I didn't know about them. So thank you, Andy. I'll say that every time because it really did. As an incident commander, one of the positions that we fill as a liaison officer works right with the incident commander, face of the team, goes and meets the local sheriff, police chief, fire chief, all the politicians, whatever, direct line to me to let me know what their issues are. It was so important what I learned from the NAU program. We carried a natural resource advisor, liaison. So the resource advisors that the local unit would have, that the Tonto National Forest would have, that the Grand Canyon would have, the people that were working on all the complex issues within the footprint of the fire, we had a direct line to them that had a really good relationship with our operations folks that sometimes can't communicate well with the people that are doing the work on the specific thing. So this person could speak both languages, translate it, and I tell you what, some of the biggest successes we had were because of those communications and those conversations. And I really feel that the invasive issue, the desert, how special this is, how complex the issues are, we should be taking that approach. You know, the approach we use in an emergency to communicate and work together, we need to do it on a big scale. You know, if we're gonna make a difference or try to understand what's happening in the desert. I wanna know what fire, good fire in the desert is, because it's here now. You know, I think it's always been here, low intensity, but now it's got a higher intensity because of the invasives. Because when you take a pile of Buffelgrass, how much energy does that release when you burn it? It's not supposed to be there. The plants aren't supposed to take that kind of heat. So I think we can create fire breaks where we're reducing that material and maintain them so that it is a good place to make a stand, but it's also a good place that maintains some biodiversity, maintains the structure of the vegetation that we like to look at. And we'll get there someday.